This happened when I was in college. I lived in
Stanford,
the student community at UCSB, notorious for being a party school. It fully lived up to its reputation, I tell you that. I mean, I like to party, but holy shit, these people were off the wall. As such, there were a lot of people who put themselves in dangerous situations, drinking to excess, not being careful, not locking doors, etc. It had a very isolated and insular vibe, and anyone who was hanging around there who wasn't college-aged immediately looked out of place and strange. One night, after having a few drinks, I came home to my small house, where I lived with 2 other girls, probably around 2:30 in the AM. We were all serious students. I was probably the least serious, actually. And when we partied, it was not your typical UCSB mega rager. More like a small get-together with friends. We would often have a few people spend the night, sleeping on our furniture, or in our beds as the case may be. That night, my roommates had a few people stay over who I didn't know, and I saw when I returned home that one of them was sleeping on the couch. I could tell this from the shadow that I saw there. I didn't turn the light on so I wouldn't wake them up. As I was passing by the couch to enter my bedroom, I noticed that the figure was lying very stiff. He just had this weird energy to him. He was lying down, but it was like he was putting all his energy into lying as still and rigid as possible. I paused, and the guy quickly jerked his head to face me, without moving any of his limbs. He did this so quickly that it startled me. I could see his wide open eyes glinting in the dark. I figured that I'd startled him, or that he was drunk or maybe on some kind of stimulant. I just hurried past into my bedroom, and I locked the door. I fell asleep, but at around 4:30 AM, I woke up. There was a strange sound at my door, almost like somebody was strumming their fingers against the wood very quietly. I lay still and listened. There were more quiet sounds, like someone was scratching the door with their fingers, which got louder and louder, until it was clear that he was using both his hands and scratching as fast as he could. It created an extremely loud and intimidating sound that filled me with fear. I got my cell phone and texted my roommate because I was afraid to make a sound. "Your friend is freaking me out," I typed. "Is he on coke? Can you talk to him? He's banging and scratching on my door." She didn't text me back, probably because she was sleeping. So I texted my other roommate to the same effect, covering all my bases. Keep in mind that the scratching has been going on at this point for a couple of minutes. I have no idea how he could have sustained it. Scratching a wooden door with your fingernails can't feel good. He also grabbed at my door handle and jiggled it super forcefully. Because neither of them answered, I decided to call and really wake them up, though I was scared to make a sound. I know it sounds stupid, but there was something seriously horrifying about being teased like this through the door. I knew that he was trying to terrify me. I felt like a little kid, but I could tell this guy was fucked up or something, and maybe the police needed to be called, and I wanted to loop my roommates in, since it was one of their friends. The scratching stopped abruptly, and I called my roommate, who answered sleepily. I said, "Your friend is messed up. Can you please deal with this? Do you need me to call the cops? He's seriously scaring me and he was scratching at my door, really fucking weirdly." She didn't say anything for several seconds, and when she did speak, her voice had no sleepiness in it at all. "What friend?" I replied, "That fucking guy that was sleeping on the couch." She was quiet again. "We didn't have any guys over." She then said, "Call the police." My adrenaline surged, and I told her to please lock her bedroom door as quickly as she possibly could. I realized that I hadn't heard the scratching in a while, and I had no clue where the dude had gone. Suddenly, I heard a loud banging in the other end of the house, where my roommates Lauren and Monica shared a room. The bangs were followed by the sound of them screaming in fear. I quickly dialed the police, as this maniac proceeded to bang against the luckily locked bedroom door of my two roommates as they screamed. The heaviness of the blows left no doubt that he was trying to break the door down. I told the 911 operator the situation, and she dispatched 2 squad cars. The police in Isla Vista are generally used to peeling drunks off the sidewalk and breaking up brawling frat bros. But this was really serious and strange, and I think the dispatcher got the sense from the tone of my voice how terrified I was, and she stayed on the phone with me. At one point, the banging stopped, and everything went quiet. I kept talking to the dispatcher, and suddenly looked down to see that this guy had slipped his fingers through the 1-inch gap between my door and the floor, and was just kind of waggling them around, making this weird growling sound. I screamed and backed away, which is probably my biggest regret about this situation, since when I look back at it, it would have been awesome to just stomp the shit out of those fingers and hear the guy howl in pain. When the cops rolled up, I heard running and the sound of our sliding glass door opening and closing, and then he was gone. The cops never caught him. He had broken in through our side door by jimmying the lock somehow. My door was covered in what turned out to be huge scratches he'd made using a pair of scissors, which he had discarded on the ground before he left. What terrifies me most about this was that I walked right past him. I looked him right in the face. I realize now that he was not trying to sleep, and he was not on drugs, but he was lying there so stiff because he was hiding. He probably heard me open the door and freaked out because he hadn't realized there was someone else living in the house, and just tried to blend into the couch in the darkness. Number 2. It was early September. I had just graduated from high school in June, so I was excited to start college. I decided to live on campus, and on September 4th, that's when I met
Toby,
my roommate.
Toby
He was 22. He hadn't attended college until now. He always said he lived off the fatter his land, which were his weed crop up north, up until coming to college.
Toby
Seemed like a cool guy. He and I both love going to the gym. He was an absolute monster in the weight room. He looked like your average pseudo powerlifter, built like a brick shithouse. But
Toby
was always a very quiet and sweet guy. I can't be around weed because of medicine interaction, so when he would smoke, he would risk his own arse and smoke out in the back of the dorm. Now, throughout the whole first semester,
Toby
was still a great guy, but he did end up growing some negative qualities. I'm not saying he became a bad person, but was instead adapting to his environment. After he and I went to our first college parties, he had strung together a group of 4 girlfriends, and none of them knew about each other. He was such a good liar, and I'm not just talking about being very convincing, but if I hadn't seen all of the girls with my own eyes, I would have believed that the girl of that night was his one and only. Then came Halloween. I came back to my dorm room around 11:30 at night, after being at another friend's costume party, to find
Toby
crying in bed. It was weird. I don't think he ever showed this much emotion before. So, I obviously asked him what was wrong. And he told me that one of the girls, Jessica, had been found with no hands or feet inside a cornfield people used to go and hang out at. Of course, I felt horrible. I decided I was going to try and make him feel better, so I ran into our bathroom to wash my face quick. But when I got in there, I could have sworn I saw
Toby
grinning from ear to ear as I left the room. Due to some privacy reasons, I will only tell you about Jessica. The press release that was let out was horrific. she had been found with her hands and feet cut off with what looked like a serrated saw. They also found corn husks shoved down her throat. Some pretty sick shit.
Toby.
He was never the same after Jessica's death. He started to completely skip his classes, drank heavily, spent insane amounts of time at the gym, and went up to his camp in the Adirondacks almost every weekend. This was also about the same time that the disappearances started to happen. It started with a young professor's aide. She'd been walking her dog in the neighborhood, not too far from the campus, when she went missing. They found her dog, hanged by its leash, on the aide's door. Then, 3 women that went bar hopping in downtown Syracuse disappeared. They found one of the woman's lip rings in the parking lot of the bar they were last seen. Then came possibly the most disturbing one. A pregnant woman was attacked and kidnapped from her own apartment in Pulaski. The only thing left at the scene was a handwritten note which read, "I'm your baby's daddy now." A silent manhunt was on in my area. The biggest connection I should have made was after I told
Toby.
him that a group of 25 people said they would search every inch of upstate New York to find the pregnant woman. When I told him that,
Toby.
he began to get very paranoid and jumpy. His nice demeanor began to fade. He was just so angry all of the time. Things came together about a week and a half ago. It was Friday night, and
Toby
hadn't left to his camp yet, which was weird. It turns out that he was so blazed out of his mind, he had forgotten to leave. When he did go, I felt bad for letting him leave, but now I'm kind of glad I did. The next morning, a woman was found dead, face down, near a gas station. There was blood everywhere. The woman had her tongue ripped out of her throat, but there was a sort of silver lining. The idiot who had done this had left bloody footprints that led to a gas station bathroom, and you'll never guess who was in the bathroom. Of course, it was
Toby. Toby.
He's been in custody for about 5 days now. He admitted to nearly every single murder he committed, his first one having been on his 20th birthday. The police raided his camp upstate and found a real-life horror house. Women's bodies were nailed to the wall as trophies. He even turned 2 of them into fucking sex dolls. The sick fuck even bought a crib for, well, you know. Now, how do I know all this? The police have only told immediate family what has happened. But, luckily, I know a few officers. Plus, they kind of felt obliged to show me something. You see,
Toby
he kept a journal at his camp, mostly describing all of his murders, but one entry from Halloween 2014 stood out in particular. This is what it read. Jessica found my kit in my trunk. It's a shame. I had a great spot for her. Made sure that nobody knew that she was going out with me. When police found her, I feigned tears for Dom. He's a great guy, easy to manipulate, but I'm still counting the days until he finally gets a girlfriend. I have never before been so happy to be single. Number 3. I'm an 18-year-old American male, attending my first semester in college. Sitting in my math class, I noticed a girl that was fairly attractive. I've dated a couple of girls with a similar problem, so the first thing that I noticed was that she had countless scars up and down her wrists, which made me want to be her friend. I introduced myself one day when the professor was late. Before anyone says anything, I have a girlfriend, so I wasn't trying to go after an emotionally fragile pretty girl. I sat next to her and put my hand out saying, "Hi, I'm Fockmuth." To which she said, "Oh hey, I'm Chrissy." We talked for a few days and ended up exchanging numbers. Literally, the day I gave her my number, I was a bit worried. I counted almost 200 texts in the first day, and by a week, the number was literally in the thousands. At first I was just annoyed because that's a fucking lot of texts. But the longer I waited to respond, the more alarming the texts became. The first one said, "Hey, this is Chrissy from math." The 10th said, "I have the right number, right?" And the 15th said, "Is there a fucking problem?" This was all within the first hour or two of me giving her my number. As an experiment, the third day she was texting me, I didn't respond at all, just to see what her answer would be. She sent me a death threat. On the fourth day, I told her that my girlfriend was very protective and didn't want me talking to other girls. This was a lie, but I didn't know what else to say to her. In school, I sat somewhere else instead of next to her. She continued to send me texts, even going as far as to send me pictures of her wrists with new cuts on them. The flash was always on. I sat down for lunch with my laptop in the library, enjoying the quiet. Whether it was coincidence or her finding me on purpose, she was there too. I didn't know she was there until I heard a scraping sound. I glanced up from my laptop to see her sitting 4 tables away, about 20 feet or so, carving into the table with her key. I pretended not to see her, acting like I was really into my work, when in reality, my heartbeat had quadrupled. I kept a calm demeanour, occasionally glancing up. Her eyes rarely left me, and her hand never stopped scraping with her house key. I could feel that eerie sensation of eyes on me, leaving me uneasy and nervous. After about 30 minutes, she slammed down her key, grabbed her bag and stormed out with her black hair flowing behind her. It's a shame she's crazy, because she honestly is very pretty. I looked around and saw that nobody else had noticed what had happened, as most people had their headphones in and were actually working. I casually packed up as if I had a class time approaching, putting my laptop and charger in my backpack and checking my watch a few times as if in a hurry. I felt it necessary that I keep up a charade as if I had another class, when my last class had actually ended hours ago. I did this because the feeling of her watching me never really stopped. On my way out, I walked by the desk she was sitting at. In case someone was watching, I picked up the key with the intent to turn it into the lost and found, which I ended up doing in the end. But my main interest was what she had been carving. It was a very, very rough scratching of my name with a face under it. The eyes were crosses, and a crude knife had been scratched into the face's neck. My number was carved into the table, along with the names that I have on my Snapchat, Instagram, and even the fucking URL for my Facebook. I didn't have her on any of these social medias, so I'm dumbfounded as to how she knew them. The only information missing was my address, thankfully. While I was staring at it, my heartbeat was going crazy. My vision flickered a bit, and I assumed it was because of the shitty fluorescent lighting at the school. I went about my day, kindly turning the key into the library's lost and found, but always feeling uneasy. For the first time in 4 days, I didn't receive a text from her, but my thoughts were premature. Driving home, my phone went off with a text message. I ignored it so that I could check it later, assuming it was probably my girlfriend who got out at this time. When I pulled into my driveway, I got my phone and saw that it was a picture from Chrissy. As it ends up, the flickering in my vision wasn't from the light source, of the fluorescent lights. It was the flash on her camera, taking a picture of me. She was on the floor above me, watching me look at her etching with the key in my hand. Then, another picture came through, of me turning the key in. Finally, another of me pulling away in my car. Sweat broke out while I waited for one of me in my own driveway now. Thankfully, that picture never came. I didn't respond to the 3 that she sent, and I never got another text from her. I went back to class to find her talking to another boy, acting just as happy and normal as she was when she and I first met. Just another pretty girl, I guess. Number 4. This took place about 10 years ago, when I was a freshman in college. I attended college in a rural mountain area in the northeast, a small school tucked away in the rolling hills of the mountains. The type of place where the beauty and casual grace of nature is juxtaposed by the ugliness of humanity. The newspaper was ultra-conservative, and you couldn't venture too far into the woods beyond a few trees without seeing some trace of meth activity. You know the type of place I mean. Anyway, one of my new friends from college somehow discovered an abandoned train trestle deep in the woods about 5 miles from campus. Basically in no man's land. I don't remember exactly how he found this place, because it was very much off the beaten path. The trestle crossed over a river which placidly flowed about 40 feet below. It was actually quite beautiful, and we began going there 3 times a week, just chilling on the trestle, watching the water below and the open sky above. We'd drink 40s there, smoke a bowl there, bring girls there. At some point we began jumping off the trestle into the water below, and then climbing back up. It was just a very college-y thing to do. Basically, it was our chill spot. So, one day, just needing to get away from the dorms and away from it all, I decided to go by myself to the trestle for a swim. It was around 7 PM, so I still had a good hour or so of dim sunlight, and I brought a flashlight with me for the walk home when it was sure to be dark. I made the trek through the pathways of the woods, as I'd done 100 times before, and I left my towel and flashlight on the trestle, and jumped into the water. I'd say that the water was around 10 to 15 feet deep. It flowed almost imperceptibly. You might as well be swimming in a stagnant pool. However, about 50 yards away from the trestle, the river narrows and the current picks up significantly. Then, about 20 yards after that, there is a maybe 20-foot high waterfall that bubbles and splashes with extreme violence. We used to watch large objects go over and never come up again. So, there I am, dimly bobbing my head in and out of the water, doing underwater flips, etc. But then, when I pop my head out of the water, I happen to glance to the side of the river, and I see a man walking towards the water. The water itself is kind of impeding my view, so I don't see him fluidly walking towards the water. I more see him in different stages of being closer to the water, like flipping through a flip book. He's about 15 feet away, then 10 feet, then 5 feet. I can barely give you a description. Maybe around 6 feet tall, pale, skinny, black hair pulled back in a ponytail. What I do remember most about his appearance was the extremely empty look on his face and in his eyes. Like he was doing something mundane, like taking out the trash or raking leaves. So I'm there, treading the water, not really knowing what to think. But I see he's no longer beside the river. Instead, he's jumped into it, and is swimming pin straight directly at me, really, really fast. I tried to swim the opposite way, but within a minute, I feel him grab my ankle and tug. I tried to scream, but water filled my mouth. While I'm underwater, he lets go and goes up for air, then grabs back onto me and pulls me again. It seems like he's done this before, and I never once see him after he's jumped in the water. He's gradually pulling me to where the current picks up before the waterfall. I start to realize this, and just fucking flip out, kicking, screaming, cursing, but to no effect. Finally, I feel the current start to take me, and as I twist away towards the waterfall, I look back and see this fucking guy just casually swimming back to where he jumped in the water, not even looking at me. This is by far the scariest moment of my life as I approach the waterfall. Long story short, I go over, and I'm underwater for a long time, over a minute for sure. The water above me is unrelentingly pushing me under. The only reason I survived this was that there was a large log that had gone over the edge, and I was able to grab it and leverage it against the bottom to push me away from the crushing water. I survive, obviously, but then I had to trek the miles back to my dorm, in the dark without my flashlight, every step of the way thinking he would come back to finish the job. The next year, a football player drowned going over that fall. The news said it was because of an extreme current due to the recent rainfall, but I've always wondered about that.
Hey there, fellow explorers of the eerie and mysterious. Welcome back to the Blue Panic channel. I've got some exciting news to share with you all today. So, you know how we've been diving into the chilling world of electric chair executions and all things spine tingling? It's been quite the ride, hasn't it? But guess what? We're shaking things up a bit. That's right. While those videos have been a blast, I've been feeling the urge to venture into the realm of horror stories and creepypastas. I mean, who doesn't love a good scare, right? And here's the best part. I'm doing it for you, my amazing subscribers. I want to bring you even more thrilling content to sink your teeth into. Plus, I'm hoping to welcome a whole bunch of new friends into our spooky little family. So, to all my existing subscribers, thank you for sticking with me on this journey. And to all you potential new subscribers out there, buckle up because things are about to get seriously spooky around here. Get ready for goosebumps, hair-raising tales, and maybe even a few sleepless nights. But hey, isn't that what we're all here for? Thanks for tuning in, and as always, stay curious, stay creepy, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep your flashlight handy and your doors locked. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows.